So today we're going to be looking at the front springs. I know they can be a challenge on the Alfas because of the way the shock sits into the hub. So I'm going to look at doing it in an alternative way. So first things first, let's get the car up in the air. So with the car up in the air, safely on stand, it's all jacked up fine, we've got chocks underneath the back wheels and everything. We can now see exactly what we're looking at. Before we lifted the car, I just took a couple of measurements. Again, when we did the back springs, just from the floor to the lip of the wheel arch, but also this time from the centre of the hub, just to the lip of the wheel arch again. So the main reason that people have problems doing these shocks and springs on the Alfa is because Alfa do it slightly differently, or certainly on the Giulietta anyway. Where the shock comes down here, rather than on other cars where kind of you have the clamp come around, you have the two bolts that come in and kind of clamp together. With the Alfa, obviously you can see that this actually inserts down into the hub. So you've got all of this extra distance, extra height that actually needs to come up out of the hub to allow you to actually remove it. So just before I start doing anything, what I'm going to do is just take a couple of pictures. So for the ABS wires, for brake sensor cables, for the brake lines and everything, just to make sure that when we put it all back together, it all goes back exactly as it was. Okay, so with a couple of pictures taken, what I'm going to do now, just release the ABS cable, brake hose, and just unplug the brake wear sensor, and just bring that around to the side so it's out of the way. So now with those three disconnected, what I'm going to do is just look to disconnect the drop link. So for removing this drop link, we've just got a 5mm Allen key in there and then a 15mm spanner on the top of it. I'm just going to put a bit of WD on there just to help it come off. And then we should be good to go. We can see now as we're loosening it off, obviously the drop link's under a bit of pressure. This wheel's, well, the wheel that's kind of in front of me here, just here, is obviously down as far as it should be. The wheel on the other side is back on the floor, or still on the floor should we say, and obviously they're connected together through the drop links and the anti-roll bar. So to ease that pressure and to make this obviously safer, what we're going to do is just jack up the hub so it's actually bringing this end up. So as I lift this up, you can see obviously just where I've got it on the bottom of the ball joint point there. What I'm going to do as well is just obviously keep an eye over there on that jack point there where the axle stand is, because obviously I'm lifting part of the car up, so I'm taking some of the pressure off. So like I said before, I took some measurements from the middle of the hub to the wheel arch, so that's where I'm going to try and aim to get that same measurement in again. But obviously staying safe, I'm just going to keep that point there, or watch that point there, to make sure that the weight of the car is still on the axle stand and not really too much on this point here. Okay, so like that, it's much better. We can hear it and see it, it's much looser. So now we should just be able to finish off taking that out without any strain or pressure on that. Brilliant. And I'll just pop that nut back on there. Next up, what I'm going to do is just kind of break the seal on this main bolt going through here. So we've got our E14 kind of reverse Torx bit, and on the left hand side over here we've got our 18mm socket. I'm just going to give this a bit of a brush over with a wire brush first, just to get as much of that dirt off, so that when they start to move, that dirt doesn't then foul up the screw threads. And then just a spot of WD-40 on there, just to help things move. Okay, so we've just got our Torx bit there, or inverse Torx bit there. Obviously, we can see the handle's just kind of propped against the side of the car. And on this side, we've just got our breaker bar with our 18mm bit on it. So what I'm hoping to do is just pull this up and break that seal. Okay, with the seal on those, that nut and bolt broken nicely, it's nice and free now. It should be easy enough to take off when we come to that point in a minute. What I'm going to do now is just clean up around this top area where this strut goes into the hub. and then just as ever, bit of WD. So this is where the difference comes in between the way that I've seen it done before and the way that I'm going to try and do it today. With the hub still up in the air with the jack underneath it, the spring's obviously under pressure, so they're already tensioned. So what I've been able to do is get the spring compressors just nicely in position. I had to come up in this side first because that's where we've got this nice big recess, and then this one kind of just slid around nicely and allowed me just to hand tighten it up to this point. And then this one, same way, up into this recess, moved it around about as far as it's going to go, and then just loosened it up. So we're not 180 degrees opposite each other, but we're as close as we're going to be. The spring's not going to ping off anywhere at the moment anyway, because it's still inside the shock assembly. And I will say as well, obviously while I'm working with these, same as we did the other day with the grinder, we've just got our glasses on. So with those compressors in place, what I'm going to do now is just slowly lower the jack. Hopefully this hub should come down, and we'll see if we need to give it a knock just to break free, obviously where the shock comes into the hub here. So that's lowered down really nicely. Just as it come down, we can just hear it moving about slightly on here, but it's really good. It's still under tension. I'm not going to put my fingers in the springs or anything anymore. So with it now lowered down, just checking our fixing here. You can see it's obviously just nice and loose, so I might just loosen it off a little bit more and just take that nut and bolt all the way out. And then what I think we're going to need to do is just give a knock kind of on the top of the hub here, and just to see if we can get this some movement from the shock away from the hub. Great, okay, so with that released, what actually happened was, just as I was finalising, just kind of moving it out, pulling it out, what actually happened, the seal actually broke and the hub actually dropped just ever so slightly, which was really good. So now that's released, what I'm going to do is just give the hub a little rock and see if it wants to drop down any further. Okay, brilliant. It's actually dropped all the way down, straight onto the jack. So we can see just there exactly what I was saying about, just where that hub dropped down, it's just landed on the mount of the jack. So what I'm actually going to do is just now pull the jack out and just put something on the floor below just to catch it should the hub drop. We've got now just a kind of a soft plastic toolbox, should we say, underneath it, so there's much more clearance. We're just going to give it a bit more of a rock and hopefully that will drop down a bit further. So I was quite optimistic about it, but it seems like it's not actually going to go any further. And I think if we look, what we probably all expected realistically is that the bottom wishbone is actually fouling just down here. So we are going to have to take this out, unfortunately. So to help us do that, let's just get these panels off, get this under panel off so that we can access this point here. So we just got those panels removed, which is good. We've got that, obviously, that just first bit of the inner wheel liner there is off. Inner wheel arch liner, should I say, rather. And then obviously looking at the fixings for this support, we can see obviously at the front where we've kind of got the crash bar. It's going to be accessible, but I think realistically, like we've seen in the other videos and like we've all said, probably going to be a lot easier and time efficient just to take the bumper off. So I was trying not to, I was really trying to avoid to dismantle as much as possible, hence why I was giving these compressors a go to see if we could avoid having to do this completely. But I think in the long run what we see is that's not going to be an option. I think probably if we were able to get another one more coil in there, it would probably give us enough, because we're so, to be fair, it's really close there as to how far it just needs to drop down, but it's just not enough. So I think what we're going to do is obviously, yeah, carry on exactly what's expected, get that bumper off. Obviously that's going to save time when we're doing the other side as well, but and that'll allow us to get that off, get that bolt, and then we can drop that down. Great, okay, so we've got the other side of the car up in the air. Just had to obviously take the wheel off, which will save us time later as well. Just released the front bumper, obviously the T55s on the top, the rubber clips, the T30 screws and the Phillips screws in the wheel arch, same as we looked at on how to remove the front bumper video. So now we can really see these fixings here that we need to remove just to help start getting this bar off. So I think first off, I'm just going to release these ones and then we'll do the rest moving along to remove the bar. Okay, so these ones are a 15. Right, once you've got these 3 bolts removed, just 1, 2, 3, then it's just a couple of clips basically holding in this top corner. It's just the final clip in there, so that just pulls off. And then we've got another 15 just here, just behind the wheel arch liner. And then underneath here we've got two E18 inverse Torx splits. And so with those fixings out, the three that we had there, the one for the brace, and then the two that we just took out, the two 18s, we should now be able to just remove it, hopefully. Okay, so because I removed this fixing from here as opposed to the fixing at the top, it just prevents it coming out because it hits on here and it hits on the bottom end of the gearbox just under here. So what I've done is just moved it out of the way, and now we can access this. The next up then is just to release this one. This is a E20, so I've just WD-40 the other side, so hopefully when it starts going then we should be able to obviously get some good traction on it. But for now I've just got a 20 on my breaker bar. Whether or not we need it, we should just be able to break that seal. There we go. And now we should be able to put it on socket. With that bolt now removed, we just got one more to do, which is just going to be this one here. So again, on the bottom here we've just got our E18 inverse Torx bit. So again, we'll just get the breaker bar on that, release that and pull it all the way out, and that should allow us just to get some more flex on this wishbone. Just to show you that one, it was I think it was an 18mm nut on the top, with the washer underneath it as well, and just that E18 on the bottom of it. So that just come off nicely, a bit of WD-40 obviously as ever, just to help that come out. So now we should really be able to get some movability. Hopefully if we just pull this out slightly, we should get that last little bit just to lower it down so that we can hopefully get this dropped out over here. Okay, so it's just slipped down really nicely there. Hopefully you saw that kind of slide down, and what it did was just obviously land on here. So we can see, if I just move the camera back in again a little bit, we've really come down. That's really given us that clearance that we needed to. So what I'm going to do now is just gently move this out of the way, move the box out of the way, and that should hopefully, we should just get that last little bit to enable that to come down. Obviously we can see we've got it free now. It's just a little bit of extra required just on the bottom now. You just see on the damper we've got that aligning point that just goes into the hub there. Now comes the next interesting bit, which is trying to release these clips. So what I should say, just as I did that first click, you can just see the white marks that we put on, just so we know exactly how far they need to go back in when we take them apart again. So all I'm doing is just popped a screwdriver in there, just tiny kind of sideways, just to help them expand a little, and that's just allowed that to come off. I'm just going to do the same on the other side, just nice and gently. Okay, that's the first half off. And what I should say as well, just down under here, because we want to make sure that this doesn't just suddenly drop down, land up, scratching your disc or breaking something that you don't want it to do, you know, fouling your brake hoses, or even worse, falling on your foot. What I've done is just popped it up just on the top of the hub there for now, so it's just taking the weight of it. Gently, gently. And there we go, that's that half released as well. So now back under the car, we can see obviously it's not gone anywhere, it's just sitting on there. So the weight of it is now just being taken by that. So obviously still with the safety glasses on, what I'm going to do is just carefully move it away, and then we should be able to pull it out and move it away from the car. With that now removed, we can see exactly where we are, how many coils we've got left to compress, and exactly what it looks like. Looking up at the top end, when we just turn it around, we can see obviously what we've got, what's the front, so we've just got that point now, so we'll look out for that as well. But I think what I'll do for now is just probably loosen these off, get this extra coil in, both sides nice and safely, so it's a nice easy, a nice even clamp as such, and then that should allow us to move on to the next bit. And then obviously what we need to do now is just release the top nut. So we've got my, I think it's a 5 or 6 mil Allen key just in the top there. So just here, as you can see, it just goes in the top. And then it's an 18 mil socket that you need, kind of the open-ended one. Ordinarily it should look like that. For whatever reason, my toolbox doesn't have an 18 mil one of them, so I managed to borrow one off a neighbour kindly, which is brilliant. So we'll just get that on there. I've just managed to get the first break of it kind of off as such. So now we're ready to go, and we can just keep going and remove this. There's no more pressure on there. So as we do this, we should be able to just release it nice and easily, keeping this intact so we don't lose the bearings out of here as well. And it should just be able to come away. Okay, great. So now we can see, hopefully, just our top nut there, just the last couple of final turns. There we go, and that's off nicely by hand. So now we just need to release kind of the top mount. There we go, that's come away. There's no pressure on the spring at all. Remove the spring. We've got our bottom rubber there, so we just take that off as well, same as the back springs. And now carefully we can remove these compressors. We've just been able to give this a quick clean up, just give it a wipe over, you know, just get some of that worst dirt off it. It's always nice to put things back clean rather than dirty. When we took the spring off as well, what we needed to note was what was the top and what was the bottom. They are slightly different. The one that's kind of got more of a coil, less wound, shall we say, it's not as tight, is the bottom that we can see here. So we'll just get our compressors on now, get this clamped back down. We'll get the bottom rubber on here as well, and we can see exactly where that sits. When we did the back springs, we could see that there was that seat in there, which is kind of exactly what we've got. There we go, that bit there. So that's where the seat, bit sponge, sorry. So that's where that is going to basically sit into there like that. With those springs compressed, we're able to get this on just enough, obviously, so we can just get our top nut on. So our top nut is now nicely on there, so we know that it's not going to shoot off and fly anywhere. So what I'm going to do now is just do the reverse of what I did before. Just get our socket obviously in there with our Allen key through, tighten that up so that's all tightened down, and then we can take these clamps off. Okay, so with all that back together, the compressors are off, it's all ready to go. Springs on there nicely. Our top rubber is aligned where it needs to go. What do I mean by that? Well, you can see this side is longer than this side, it's a little bit shorter. Obviously where that fits up into the wheel arch is slightly tapered, so that needs to sit in there as well. So we just aligned that basically with looking at the cameras, the pictures that we took before, so we can just see exactly where that is. Yep, it's on a set of bearings anyway, so it will be able to kind of move around, and then we'll come back to it in a week or so and just check the torque settings just from obviously inside the bonnet, which is where we can see the top mount. So yeah, so let's get it back on the car. Great, okay, so with that just balanced there again, just with the weight of it sitting on the hub, I'm just going to go back up to the top and we'll get those clips on. Right, so we've got our clips, which we can see our marks on, where they need to go to. So we'll just offer these in. Suspected it might be a little bit tight, and just basically the pressure of the rubber underneath just needing to lift it up a little bit. So we'll see if we can get a bit more pressure up, just to make sure that these clips go under it. So that top rubber mount was just off slightly, in actual fact I just had to turn it round. So kind of that lip on the rubber bung, I didn't actually line up to this hole, but it actually lines up pretty much to this hole. Look down now, just about see it. I had a look on the one on the other side, and that's a key indicator as to where it goes. So we're just about there on these clips, just need to go a little bit tighter. So I just thought what I'd try, just get one of the clamps and just see if I can clamp it on
just tighten it up. See if this works. Oh, perfect. There we go. Nicely in line. So I'm really happy with that. So I just get the cap. There we go. So now back inside the wheel arch, you can see we've got our shock just nicely ready to go in. Obviously the tab at the back is lined up with the tab. You can just about see maybe the light and dark, just that little shadow there. So now it's just going to be a case of giving it a wiggle and getting it to line in and just fall into the hub. Just a handy note, obviously we put the clips in up the top underneath the bonnet, and then trying to get this in, there just wasn't enough flexibility to kind of rock the hub to get it in there. So I've just removed the clips again at the top just to give it a little bit of flex, and then still there wasn't really a lot of manoeuvrability here, shall we say. So what I've had to do is just use the arm of the jack just to lift up that wishbone slightly, just to allow that to come in, and then just with a good few kind of rocks back and forward, shall we say, that's just allowed that to pop in. Obviously then it just clicked in nicely, so now it's ready to just slide up it. Okay, so I'm just gently using the jack just on the bottom of the wishbone again, just slowly moving it up. Obviously you can see now it's just coming in there nicely. So that's just right up to the bump stop. So now with that there, I'm just going to go and put the plastic clips in back under the bonnet. So with that there as well, I'm just going to see if I can get this nut and bolt back in through here, just to hold that into position for now. Next one I'm going to do is just this rear wishbone. Great stuff. Okay, so with this one just in now, just finger tight, we just need to now get this other one in over here. It's taking just a little bit of movement just to get it in there. Just had to kind of use a pry bar just to get it to slide back in that way, just as it would come out this way to give us that obviously extra height to allow this to lock down, drop down. So now it's back in. We're just going to get this big one back in here. So then next up, just tighten this one up so it's in there nice and tight. Next up, we're just going to pull this bar back across. If I can get my hand in now. There we go. Just make sure it's aligned at the front as well. There we go. And I'll get all these fixings back on for this one. With all those fixings in, all nice and tightened up, torqued up, what we've got now is just a trolley jack just underneath the hub here. So we're just going to lift this up so that we can then tighten this bolt up, get this into alignment just up to the bump stops, and then we can get this one all torqued up. And then while it's still sitting on the jack, we're just going to let it down slowly just so that we can get this drop link installed properly. Okay, there we go. Okay, so with all those on, we can just get all these cables and everything back into their holders. So with all those back in their positions, the brake hoses, the ABS lines and the pad wear indicators, or the pad wear indicator sensor, should we say. Just going to get this other inner lining in, just into this position here. So that's all back together, everything's back where it was previously, all the hoses, all the lines, all the panelling and everything like that. The springs brand new, which is great. All we've got to do now is just put the underneath and the front bumper back on, so we'll get onto that in a second. Looking forward to going for a test drive soon, hopefully. So with everything back together, you can see we've got the bumper on just here as well. What we've done is just put a bit of copper grease on the top of some of the nuts and bolts and bits and pieces here and there, just to stop them corroding. And then obviously, because we've been playing with WD-40 and spraying it all over the place, what I'm going to do is just stick a bit of brake cleaner on here, just give them a good clean up, probably let it rotate, just make sure we've got a lot of it. So it's all back together, everything's gone back on really well. We've only just done the one side today. I think probably because of that, trying to sample, see whether or not we could do it in the alternative fashion, took quite a lot of time. I think getting the springs kind of tightened on and off as well, you know, using the clamps to get them compressed, it's quite time consuming. So we're going to go for a test drive, see how it goes on this one, and then yeah, we'll do the other one tomorrow. So I've got that to look forward to, so stay with me. I'll just get tidied up and I'll go for a quick test drive. Back from the test drive and everything's great. It's exactly as it was before. It's firm, it's tight, it handles well, goes around the corners brilliantly, goes along in straight lines nicely. I wasn't sure whether or not we might want to get the tracking done just after once we've done both sides. I might still do it, but for the moment, just after doing that side, it's still running really true. So I'm really pleased with it. I think in all honesty, trying to do that trick where we kind of put the spring compressors on first was pretty optimistic. Had it worked, it would have been great. It didn't work, so hopefully, you know, like I always say in these videos, you learn by my mistakes. Don't bother wasting your time trying to do that, because it simply just didn't give anything that we needed to give, basically extra room. If you're going to give it a go, you know, be conscious that it is involved. You do need to do a lot. Make sure you've got all the right size tools and stuff like that as well. From my side of things, obviously it's taken a fair bit longer as well, because I've been videoing, trying to get the camera angles, trying to not film myself too much, getting in the shot in the way, you know, you want to see stuff, you don't want to see me. So it's probably been a bit more time consuming than otherwise it might be. Tomorrow I'm going to do this side. Maybe I'll add this on to the end of the video, exactly how well it went, exactly how long it took just to do the one side without messing about with cameras, without trying to find the right tools. Now I've got them all out, so I'll just add that onto the video now and we can see exactly how long it's going to take. So it's the next day and it's set to be the hottest day of the year as well. You can see the sun's just coming up from behind the house. So I've only got a short amount of time before the sun starts to really come over and lighten up this area. So because of that, I want to try and get this wheel done as fast as possible. So yesterday took quite a while, like I said, with lots of trial and error, but today I'm just going to get on it. I'm not going to waste too much time filming or anything like that. I'm just going to try and point out some of the handy, useful tips that might be of benefit, shall we say, on your journey through changing your springs. One handy tip that I would say is when you're changing the spring out and you're trying to undo that top nut from the strut itself, unless you've got something to really clamp it into, you know, a good workbench or something like that, it's worth trying to break it free as early as possible when it's being really held really well. So in actual fact, what I've done is just cracked that top nut just now, just kind of broken that seal. So hopefully when I get it off and it's in my hand and it's not held into anything, it should be a lot easier to do. So it's now 10:15. We'll see how long it takes. Okay, 20 minutes in, front end stripped down. Obviously we've done the same as we did yesterday, just taking off this side so that we could release that front bumper and the fixings inside there. The under trays are all off as well, just sitting there nicely. We've got our inner kind of wheel arch liner piece off as well, ready to go to access that fixing there that we can just see, just that one there, and obviously these ones in here. So another 20 minutes in, we've got the brace here is all released, it's ready to rock and roll. We've got the only difference that we did today that we didn't do, or that we did do yesterday rather, is just around the front. Obviously there's no actual requirement to pull this off. As much as it's loose, we don't need to just pull it off. You could do, I suppose, if you wanted to clean it, but we're just going to leave it on today. All the hoses disconnected, drop link is off. So now we're ready to just loosen off that wishbone, get that fixing out there, get that fixing out there, just pull it forward slightly, and then we should be good to, I think, break this bolt here, or just to crack it open. Another 10 minutes in and we have our wishbone all released. I had a little tip, what I found just as a result of putting it back together yesterday, just with a flat screwdriver. Once you've got the fixings out of here, what I'm going to do is just, you can see the screwdriver here, just wiggling around, just pop it in there and just kind of lever it forward so the actual wishbone starts to come forward, rather than trying to manipulate the whole hub and kind of pull it out and push it down a bit further. If you just prise it out slightly, both here and over here on the other fixing as well, you can see that one's prized out already. That makes it a whole lot easier. And then pushing it back, obviously you just need to do the same back through the hole, and it'll help it go back in. Okay, it's been another good 20 minutes, just because it had loads of problems getting this middle bolt out. Basically, it just bound up. I think there was a bit of corrosion in there, and it just took ages and ages and ages to work its way out. But now it's out, and the trick of, like I say, prising these forward really helped, because the first time I kind of tried to push this down, we can see that it's actually gone nice and low, and there we go. As I pull the shock forward, it's just about to pop straight up. So yeah, definitely worthwhile just prising those forward slightly, because it gives you so much more flexibility just to be able to kind of get that out and not have a fight. Today we got the shock out in an hour and a quarter, and that's even with a problem. And that hour and a quarter includes stripping the car down, all the bumper off, all the under trays off and everything. So an hour and a quarter. If we were doing both at once, then obviously we've saved all our time taking all the bumper off and stuff already, so it'd be a whole lot faster for that side. So 22 minutes later, springs off, all ready to rock and roll. We're giving it a good clean, giving it a good kind of wash over, again just with some water, but it's ready to go. The springs are off, or the other original spring is off. To be fair, this one I think is actually in worse state than the other one. We didn't get an advisory on this one, but yeah, good to be changing it anyway. 20 minutes later, springs all installed and it's ready to go. So next step, let's get it back on the car. Everything's back on, the bumper's back on, the undercarriage and under tray is all back on. It's taken quite a long while, to be fair, as ever. All the fixings and fasteners that you've got underneath there, I made sure everything's gone back in. I'll just check the torque settings on the other side again as well, so it's all good. So all that's left now is just to get the wheels on. Brilliant, so it's all ready to go. All back together, wheels are on, torqued up, a couple of greases on all the joints and bits and pieces. Let's go for a test drive. Great, okay, so back from the test drive, second test drive, one for after doing this side, and yeah, everything's really good. It feels really good, it handles really well again, like I say, tracking straight down the middle, nice and straight. So another job, really pleased with that. The time now, it's just gone 1, having got it all back together and been for the test drive. So I think we started about 9:45, so what's that, 3.25 hours. I'd say that definitely, if you're going to do it, do both at the same time, because the time it takes to get the bumper off, the under tray off, get the car up in the air, by the time you've taken it all off and then put it all back together again, you're probably talking about 2 hours worth of graft that you could probably lose, because you're going to do it all tomorrow again anyway. So for now, you know, hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully it just confirms what you probably knew already, maybe not. So like I say, you know, hopefully that's been useful to someone. If you've enjoyed it, give us a like down below. If you've really liked it and you've not subscribed already, give us a subscribe coming up now. For the time being, you know, hopefully, like I say, you've managed to take something away from it. Really appreciate your time for watching it. So yeah, for now, thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.